ado, y'all are fixing to be entertained by two of the best. I have personally listened to Mr. Lucas's speeches, and you will enjoy them. So, I guess we'll start off with Mr. Lucas and let Mr. Lucas jump in here, and we'll take it and go from there.
Now let's let Dale take off. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor.
Dale, go ahead, run with it.
I said thank you, Mayor, for our introductions, and make you feel pretty good about himself listening to John talk about you. But first, I was going to tell us, because since we are at Ellis Park and we're talking great stuff about Ellis Park, and that's the truth. I love this place. I can't remember the first time coming over here. My mother telling me today it was 1972 when I was 4 years old that was the first time she brought me to Ellis Park. She was telling me that this morning. And we used to just couldn't wait for the summer, Churchill to be over and us to come to Ellis Park. It was just a big playground on the backside. And John's right. I always wanted to go and train horses at Saratoga and race at Saratoga and try to get on to the highest level. And this was a great place to learn. But the first or second year I was at Saratoga, I ran a horse, ran dead last, and some guy starts screaming at me from the grandstands, "Go back to Ellis Park where you belong. You're burning up money up here." And I got so mad I went and tried to track him down. I wanted to fight him. And I do belong at Ellis Park, so I got to start thinking. But the next race, I'm sitting in the race, and I was still steaming. The next race, Wayne walks in after the race, and he's laughing. I said, "What are you laughing about?" He says, "Some guy in the grandstand just yelled down to me, 'Go back to quarter horses where you belong. You're burning up money.'" And we handled ourselves a little bit differently. And as we walked out together that afternoon, Wayne tells me, "Kid, you better start judging yourself in 5-year increments or you'll drive yourself crazy." And that's probably the best advice I ever got in horse racing.
Boy, the New Yorkers are the worst. When you come out of that paddock at Belmont, you better have some thick skin, because they will tell you how they thought it should be. They are the worst. You just have to roll with it. I laugh at them and tell them we'll get together as soon as they get the garbage delivered, and we go from there.
That's pretty good stuff, and I've followed Wayne ever since that day, or before that. I was a major fan, but that's when I thought, this guy's all right. We became friends, I think, at that time, walking out, and he's helped me ever since. Another good story about Wayne, we were Wayne Lucas style. If you roll with Wayne Lucas, you're rolling in high cotton. We had horses in at Keeneland one day, and then we both had horses in the Indiana Derby. And I tell this story to show what horsemanship. Everybody knows the flair and the fashion and the movie star attitude and looks. But no, we ended up at Indiana Downs. But we started out at Keeneland. And we drove over to Louisville, and Wayne had us an airplane sitting there waiting on us. We jump in that. We fly to Hoosier Park. It's a drizzly October night for the Indiana Derby, and neither one of us ran very well. So we go back to the barn. I want to run in and check on my horse, and I was aggravated. I'm always mad, I guess. I was mad then too, because my horse ran bad. And I jump out of the car and I ran into the receiving barn. And when I was going in, there was a couple there, an older couple, and they had this old beat up pickup truck and a beat up horse trailer, and they were trying to pull this filly onto this horse trailer. You could tell they'd been there forever. She was already soaking wet. I went right past them. I go in, check my horse, and I come back out. Here's Wayne in his $5,000 suit, or maybe more. $500 cowboy hat, adjusting the halter and adjusting the shank, 2 or 3 laps in a circle and straight onto that horse trailer. Those two people stood there on the side with their mouths open. They said, "Mr. Lucas, we never expected to meet you, much less have you on our van." And we get back in the car, and he elbowed me and he said, "They were looking in the eye. You can't do that." So there's true horsemanship behind everything Wayne Lucas has ever done.
You see these horses that refuse to go in the gate. I've always said that if you'll teach them how to lead and get their confidence, they'll go anywhere. And that's what we always do. We always make sure that they absolutely will lead and follow us anywhere. And then when we open the gate, it just becomes secondary. We just load them in. You very seldom see one of ours that will not just walk right in there. They all do. And if they don't, I'm really disappointed in them. But the big thing is that we doing something on the ground at the barn, and then taking them over there and subjected them to that. It works every time. If they'll just, you gain their confidence, you can do anything with them.
Wayne, tell them about when you started fooling with horses, you and Clyde Rice.
Well, I grew up in a little town in the heart, right in the heart of Wisconsin, and the population 6,000. There was no racetracks, no people that were really even interested in racing, other than we had the county fair there, and we used to race our ponies. But I went to a one-room school with one teacher that taught all 8 grades. Now, this sounds like some story you make up, but that's the truth. One teacher taught all 8 grades. She'd come up and give them so much of an assignment. Next class, her grade would come up. I graduated with 2 in my class. From the 2nd grade to my freshman year in high school, I graduated with 2. I was 2nd in my class. And I'm proud to say today that I have a master's degree from the University of Wisconsin. But we fooled around, and a dear friend of mine that Dale is referred to here, named Clyde Rice, he's from a racehorse family. His daughter, Linda Rice, is very prominent in New York as a trainer also. But what we used to do is we used to take a lot of the horses to the summer camps up in northern Wisconsin. They'd have these camps, people from Chicago, Milwaukee, and around would send their kids up there for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and we would furnish the horses. But where we got them, in Antigo, there is a large mink ranch. Now, I don't think it's there anymore, but the mink ranch, the diet for mink, the preferred diet for mink is horses. So what they would do, they would get these Mustangs out of South Dakota and North Dakota, bring them in a truckload, and they'd run them down a chute. And Clyde, my buddy, and I, we would sit, now we're talking about 9, 10 years old. We'd sit on the edge of the chute, and when a pretty one went by with a lot of color or had some conformation, we'd holler, and they would gate cut that one, and then they would sell it to us by the pound. And we'd take those, and we would break them. Now, they damn near killed us, but I can't believe my mother and father let us even do this, but we
Did they even know?
Yeah, we'd get them out. That was all also potato country, and in the spring they would have these fields they'd open up with an 18-inch plow, and so we'd get them down in the plowed field, and then get a saddle on them, and they couldn't jump very high because they'd sink in so far, and we'd be able to ride them, and we'd just wear them out down there, and then eventually we'd get them so we could ride them. But we started trading horses. I bought my first horse in a public auction when I was 11, and that's been something I really enjoyed, the auction. I love the action, love it. I'm going to confess something. From that, buying one that was going down the chute to be slaughtered, at Keeneland in the September yearling sale, I bid $13 million on one.
Pretty big change.
That's a hell of a stretch.
Gap.
That's a big gap from there. I didn't get it. The Arab, or not the Arabs, but the Irish came back at 13-1, and it turned out to be a nice horse over there, and I probably got lucky. I had 4 guys with me that we were all going to split it up, but 2 of them dropped out at 10 million, and then I looked down at my other guy, and he's from Texas, and there was no quit to him, so he's saying, "Get him, go get him, get him."
He didn't know he was going to have to buy a whole lot more of the horse. The other 2 had dropped out.
That's exactly right, Dale. I said, I wonder if he knows that it's just he and I, and my net worth is about $2,000. So I pulled up. I quit bidding. He come down there and said, "What'd you quit for? We had him on the ropes. What'd you quit for?"
Yeah, at 13.1.
Yeah.
But tell him the story about Houston. That's a good story. Wayne will put his money where his mouth is. He loved that racehorse, and nobody wanted to buy him with you, did they?
That's right. I had him as my number 1 pick in the fall yearling sale at Keeneland. I thought he was the best colt there. And we had our little meeting, had 2 or 3 of my clients with him, and they said, this horse is going to bring a lot of money. I said, I think he will. I think he'll bring serious money. They said, well, rather than give $2 million for that one, or 2.5 or whatever, why don't we buy 3 at $500,000 each and spread it out? I said, well, that's good. That's a good philosophy, but those 3 will chase this one. So I didn't think anything more of it, and I got in there, and when he went in the ring, my old heart went to pounding, and I thought, this is the best horse. So I started bidding, and I bid, and I was rocking along there, and it got to about $2.5 million, and one of my clients said, is that you? And I said, yeah, you want in? He said, hell no. And I said, hit him again. So eventually I gave $2.9 million for him. Now I had 2 little ranches in Oklahoma, so I shipped him into Oklahoma to avoid the taxes and on the sales tax on him. And one of my clients called me the next morning. He said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm looking out the window at the prettiest yearling in America. He said, what are you really doing? I said, I'm waiting for the Liberty National Bank officials to get here and assess these ranches and tell me what they'll give me for them so I can pay for this son of a bitch. Anyhow, then that story, he ran out just north of $3 million as a racehorse, and then we sold him for $3 million.
Now your partners did come in on you, though.
Yeah, one of them did. One guy. Yeah, I took all I could.
Right. That's a pretty good story. I'll tell another quick story about Wayne. So we already know he's got a kind heart and likes to teach. He taught me to calm down at Saratoga. We know he's a great horseman. He puts that filly on the truck and trailer. That same year, I think it was a November at Churchill. It was a rainy old drizzly when we ran on Wednesdays. There weren't 5 people at the racetrack, and Wayne and I are eating lunch together at the Turf Club. And we come walking down, and I looked up the board, and I was 25-1. I said, Wayne, I think I'll win this race, and I'm 25-1. He said, I don't think you can win. I think I'll win. He was 25-1. So we both saddled our horses, and we stood separate over in the corner, and we started marking the horses off that we liked and didn't like. And we got together, and we put our money together. I think we put up $600 apiece or something. I won the race. He ended up getting up for 4th by that far. We had a superfecta and got back $18,000. So I'm the only person in the winner's circle with my horse, me and the groom, and I look up and Wayne's yelling down at me, waving the ticket in the air like he's a kid in a candy store. I said, this thing has won 4 Kentucky Derbies, and he still gets excited any type of win. So he's passionate about horse racing.
Hell, I loved it, boy. I had the winning ticket. He's down there, and I'm hollering at him. I said, hey, look at here, 18 big ones. Right
How
here.
long did it take us to blow it, though?
Yeah. Good thing it was late in this day, or we would probably give it all back.
Anybody got a question out
Yeah,
there?
that's probably the best thing to do, Dale. Let's take any questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything? Yes, sir. Yes.
1 second.
Seth Hancock been talking about day racing medication, and he thinks it's a good thing it's going away because of the breeding. How do you all feel about that?
You're getting political. You go ahead first.
Well,
we might have different opinions.
I'm not sure I could hear it
The
properly.
medication going away.
The
How you
medication
feel
leaving
about-
us,
Yes.
you mean? Well, if we give the veterinarians enough slack, they'll actually ruin the business. I hope there's no press here, but they're working at it. Anyhow, the medication thing is out of whack. Here's one of the things. First of all, in my opinion, this is my opinion, feel strongly about it. We have got certain levels. We have to medicate or do therapeutic medication to these horses in order to make them perform just like you would an athlete in the NFL or something like that. The levels that are set now are not realistic to the sophisticated testing system that we have. The testing system is so sophisticated now, they can almost tell you if you change tap water. So what is happening here around the country, I'm not talking about the enhancing drugs, drugs that actually enhance the performance of a horse. I'm talking about therapeutic drugs and medications. We have to get those levels up in line with the sophisticated testing. That's what's wrong with the Derby situation. With that 2 petagrams on a filly, that is a legal medication. but the testing is so good, and that the levels are not in line.
Right. A picogram is 1/1 billionth of a gram.
Yes.
Two-
So
Trillion.
we have the same testing now that the Olympics have, and if we on those better races like the Derby and everything, I think that one of the things on the if we go to the other side of the spectrum where you're talking about enhancing drugs that actually help them run. Now those, I think we're not coming down hard enough on those guys. I think that we're too soft. We give them a certain amount of days, they don't miss a beat. I always said the way to solve that, if I were a commissioner, I would rule off the trainer, but I would rule the owner off too. Now, if you're an owner and you've got 2 or 3 expensive yearlings or racehorses with me, you're going to set me down and say, Wayne, run them, treat them, do whatever you want to do, but don't you get me in trouble where I lose my whole investment.
What do you think about borrow the horse?
Same thing, bar them all.
Yeah.
Because that owner's going to say, no matter what, he's going to look at me and say, don't you get me in trouble here. Don't blow. If I trained for Overbrook Farm, they had millions invested. I can't put them in that position. There's no way. And they're going to screen, you're going to screen as owners who you hire. You're going to be a little bit careful. Now, if you hire a guy that wants to take those chances, that's good. You hold your hands with them and you get busted right with them.
But then on medications like Lasix, I'm a firm believer Lasix is good for a horse. I think that it's just a blood pressure medicine. Same thing, a lot of people out there probably take it right now. A race can be very stressful on a horse, and they will hemorrhage into their lungs. And then whatever we can do to make it less stressful and everybody has the same opportunity to do, I think that it's okay to have those types of medications. I think we've gone a little too far on anti-medication, and then we mix up performance-enhancing drugs and routine medication. They get way too mixed up together.
What we've done is we've buckled under to PETA and different people out there that are pushing for no medication, some medication, all different levels. And we know in the industry what is okay and what is good for us and helps the industry. But those people are holier than thou. They want that pristine, no medication, and it's a tough thing to overcome.
In a perfect world, we wouldn't need it. Neither would people. They don't need. But one of the things that we keep getting thrown into the spotlight is, like Wayne says, we're so regulated. There's so few things. There's only one race day medication that you can give a horse on race day, and it's easy to get a positive, and everybody thinks, oh, you're using all these drugs and stuff, but we're talking picograms and nanograms. It's crazy.
Boy, I'll tell you, I worry about it. I've been training 68 years. I'm 86, and been at it a long time. And I tell my help, if that veterinarian that we're using tells me that it's 48 hours, then we're going to add 2 more days and make it 96. We don't even get close because of that sophisticated testing. And I'm proud to say I've never had a bad test.
What do you think about the Bob situation? What do you think will come of that?
Bob Baffert?
Yeah.
Well, that's unfortunate too, but Bob got, in my opinion, he's a friend of mine, he got careless in that he's using the bad test that he got. If you say bad, and you got to be careful there, the positives that he's gotten are all legal drugs. They're not enhancing drugs. They never did anything to help a horse win a race, but they still are positives. So he's got to be a little more careful on how close he gives them, what he does with them, and so forth. And of course, he's in the spotlight. He's the #1 guy in the world, and consequently, you can't win the Kentucky Derby and not have that be in a spotlight with that type of medication that did show up. So I think what's going to happen on that, they've never ruled, Churchill has not ruled yet.
Well, it's the commission, not Churchill.
Well,
Neither one of
the
them
stewards, yeah, neither one, right, you're right. So I don't know where they're going to rule, but I believe if he goes to court and it'll cost him a fortune, I think he'll win, and that will be okay, but it's not. It's going to get ugly before it gets good.
I'd say it's worth a fortune to get another Derby trophy.
Well,
He needs to keep it.
yeah, he needs to keep it for not for him, but for the whole
No, for the owner.
for the whole world. That filly needs to go in the record book
But
as the winner.
It
She
wouldn't.
beat-
That many years ago, they wouldn't have been able to find picograms in a horse. It's
That's
such
true.
a small amount.
Yeah. We got that sophisticated testing, and we got the levels that are back in 1955.
Anybody else have a question for
Questions?
us? Here you go.
Yes, Mr. Lukas, I read, is it true you were a basketball coach like earlier in your career? A basketball coach or sports? I'm assuming sports.
Well, what happened? My mother said, when I was graduated from high school, she said, you got to quit fooling around at the racetrack and fooling with these horses. You got to do something worthwhile and do something where you make a contribution in life. So the next love was the basketball court and sports. So I went to university and I got a master's degree there, and I coached a couple of years in the high school, and believe it or not, the university hired me back as an assistant coach. And I spent another 3 years there at the University of Wisconsin, and then I went out to a large high school in La Crosse, Wisconsin. But the horses were pulling at me all the time. The salaries weren't that great at that time, and the horses I was running in the summers. Had a small stable, mostly quarter horses, but they were my first love. And I had in 1972, I believe it was, the head coach at Michigan offered me the #1 assistant's job at Michigan, and I thought about it for a couple of days, and I turned it down. The salary wasn't that good at the time. Now those guys, they make $1 million, even the assistants. But back then it wasn't that good a salary, and I turned it down. And 2 years later, the head coach, Johnny Orr, left and went to Iowa State. And I was real good friends with the football coach, Bo Schembeckler. And I really think in my heart I would have moved in and probably been the head coach at Michigan, and I'd like to think that at least. So, but I made the change. It turned out okay. I'm very comfortable where I'm sitting.
It's worked out pretty well for you.
Yeah, it did.
How'd you get to know Bobby Knight so well?
Bobby attended one of our practices one time, and a good friend of his, one of his very closest friends, was our Olympic coach, Pete Newell. He won the 1980 Olympics, I think, with a basketball. And Pete Newell and I became good friends. And then Bobby attended one of our practices, and we just hit it off. And we become very close friends, and we are to this day.
Sure.
Here's one up. There you go.
Turn up your mic. Turn on your mic.
Did Dale give you that hat?
Yeah.
I don't think it's on.
Turn it up. We can't hear you. It's not on. Nope. The mic is dead.
Can't hear.
There you go.
Okay.
You got it now.
For 200-something members each.
We're both trained for Churchill Downs Racing Club, so
Well, I had the first one, the first club that they developed that concept of everybody getting in for $500, 200 people for $500, and I was told to buy a horse in the $40,000 to $50,000 range and keep 40 or 50 for training expenses. So I hustled around, and I bought a really nice colt. And this is the kind of stuff that you you can't make up. The damn colt could really run. We called him Warriors Club, and he was by Majestic Warrior, and he could really run. And so we ended up winning races. Now the height of it was we go over to Keeneland, and we decide to run him in a stake, and he wins the damn thing. You would not believe what happened. You know, everybody that had a $500 investment in it has about 4 or 5 friends too at Keeneland. The mob that hit the winner's circle, they said, whoa, we can't get them all in here. They moved them out to the racetrack. There was a little over 300 people out there on the racetrack, and we led that horse over to him. A woman about 90 years old was in front of me, about 4 foot tall. She was trembling, just shaking, and she said, "Oh, this is the greatest thing that ever happened to me." And she was crying. She said, "Hold me up, I think I'm going to buckle down." And it was just unbelievable. But the guy that really came out was the photographer.
Yeah,
Boy,
he ended up making the most money.
Yeah, he did most. Boy, he was kicking those pictures on $15 a pop as fast as he could print them. He did really good.
But it's a lot of fun to have that many excited people that get to participate in the game. This used to be called the sport of kings. It's become the sport of syndicates now.
That's right.
And that's a good thing. More people involved, the better.
And a lot of those people for $500 got an education too. They found out that we had one that didn't make it. We had another one. Somebody was, I don't think you were, but was yours claimed?
No, mine wasn't claimed.
One of them was claimed. I remember that maybe at Arlington Park, but all those clubs weren't, you know.
They weren't as good as the first one,
no,
but they worked out.
They worked out, but
they got $500 worth of fun.
They did. Some of them thought they had $500,000 invested when you talked to them.
Marty, you got a question?
Both of you have had so many great horses over the years that us fans have watched, and just wondered, is there one horse for each of you that stand out that you really have a special place in your heart for?
Well, the best horse I think I ever trained was really the first great horse I had, and that was Kitten's Joy. And he was just absolutely special. He was one of the few horses I knew, when I let him over, something had to happen bad for him to get beat. And it was just, he was a homebred from Ken Ramsey, and he just had so much class. I mean, I'd sit there and watch him at night, go back to the barn, stand in front of his stall, and just watch him walk around in a circle. It was just like watching Fred Astaire dance or something. He just moved different, act different. It was different. When I was young and arrogant, and now I'm old and arrogant, but when I was young and arrogant back at Gulfstream Park, I remember one day I'm standing on the rail and I was telling these old trainers what a good horse I had. And Sonny Hine and another guy, I can't think of which one it was, but they looked at me and started yelling at me. And they said, "You don't know what a good horse is. You never had one." And until I got Kitten's Joy, I didn't know what they were talking about, but they were right at the time.
You know, I had to recruit for Wisconsin, the basketball team. I was one of the recruiters in the off season, and I'd go to these high schools, and the coach would say, "This is the best kid that ever played here." And I'd look him in the eye and say, "Who was the best one before him?" So, but here, you know, I'm asked that a lot. What's the best one? I'm going to brag a little bit here. We've had 49 world champions. We had 23 quarter horse world champions, and we had 26 Eclipse champions here in the thoroughbred business. Now, when you start to go back and say which one is the best, that really is trouble. I can do it in the quarter horse business. I trained Dash for Cash, who revolutionized the quarter horse business, was unbelievably good horse. But in the thoroughbred business, I don't know. I had some brilliant that didn't maybe make it as far as I like in a filly like Landalucci. I think that one of the best horses I ever had was Thunder Gulch, believe it or not. And the reason I say that, what I did with Thunder Gulch, I don't think I could get away with now. I don't think an owner would let me do it. I ran him in the Fountain of Youth in Florida. Now he's turned 3. He just broke his maiden. I ran him in the Fountain of Youth in Florida. 3 weeks later, I ran him in the Florida Derby. He won it. I took him to Keeneland and ran him in the Bluegrass, the Bluegrass, and he was 4th. He goes into the Kentucky Derby, wins it. comes back in the Preakness 2 weeks later and runs third. Goes to the Belmont, wins it. Take him from the Belmont to California and run him in the swaps. He wins it. Bring him back and run him in the Traverse, and he wins it. Or not the Traverse, but the Haskell. He wins it, and then I run him in the Traverse, and he wins that. Now, you try that on a horse nowadays, and you probably
Press and
get
eat you
fired.
alive.
Yeah, they just wouldn't ever put it. That shows how tough he was. And he was just a little bitty horse, too. It was interesting. Before the Kentucky Derby, I had 3 horses in that Derby. I had the 2-year-old champion from the year before, Timber Country. I had a sensational filly, which is probably going to come up in this conversation, your question, Serena Song, and I had Timber Country. Now, Donna Barton at that time, she's now married in Donna Brothers and does that NBC stuff. You probably see her out there. She was always around the barn, and she was an excellent work rider in the morning. She really had a knack for getting a horse to work perfectly. So on a Tuesday before the Derby, we worked Timber Country, we worked Serena Song, and we worked Thunder Gulch. We're riding back, and I'm next to her on my pony horse, and I said, you had the best seat in the house. What's our best chance to win the Derby? She says, this one right here. And I said, this little guy? And she said, yeah. I said, what about Timber Country? She said, well, he's good. Actually, he did run third. But she said, this is the one I think you got your best chance.
Gary Stevens rode him, right?
Yeah. Gary didn't want to ride him. He was in Hong Kong or someplace.
Right, he was.
And he said, I'm not going back there to ride that one.
Yeah, I remember he told me that even when he was there,
Yeah.
he was aggravated he was there.
Yeah, he didn't want to be there. He
Right.
didn't want to.
I bring it up to him now. I'm glad you said that because I brought that up to him not long ago and he denied it.
Well, you know, it's
Said he loved
interesting.
him all along.
It's really interesting how the riders get involved with these Triple Crown horses and the Derbies and the Preaknesses. When we won it with Grindstone, Jerry Bailey didn't want to ride him. He wanted to ride one of our other horses called Prince of Thieves. He said, I don't want to ride Grindstone, even though he had won on him previously. And of course, he only won 2 Derbies, and one we talked him into is one of them.
Where'd Prince of Thieves finish? Where'd he finish, Prince of Thieves?
5th, I think.
He might have won with Jerry on him, though.
Yeah.
If you ask Jerry, he'll say he would have.
Yeah, that's for sure. You know, we had a horse that we couldn't get to train at all as a 2-year-old. When he's turning 3, it was a big, grand-looking chestnut horse, and I just could not believe every day when I saw him that he wouldn't be a great horse. And yet, we'd work him a half mile, 50, 51, just terrible times. Well, anyhow, we got to drilling on him and changed up the program. So I'm going through the tunnel at Santa Anita, and Lafitte Pinkai, my dear friend and top rider, I said, Lafitte, I'd like to have you ride Charismatic. And he said, I got a couple horses over at Hollywood Park. Now, I just ran him 2 times for claim, 62,005. So he was probably labeled a claimer at that point. So Lafitte says, I don't think so. He said, I think I'll stay here. And Chris Antley is standing there, and he's just coming back from rehab and gone through a rough time and trying to reduce and everything. He said, I'll ride him. He walked about 30 yards in front of me, and I said, you know what? He's hungry, and he's won the Derby before. That's maybe not a bad fit. So, boom. We name him on, and he wins the Derby and the Preakness and almost the Belmont.
He was a good horse, and Chris was a great rider.
Yeah, Chris really was. It's just, that's a tragic story.
Yeah, it was a tragedy to lose a guy like him. He was a good friend. He learned how to ride at Frank Smith's training center at Breaks Off.
Yeah, I heard that. Yep.
He took him over there. But you're right, he was literally hungry to win races.
What I found with these athletes, so if they have a drug problem and it's serious, I don't understand it, but I know that when they get patting them on the back and things get to going real good and everybody tells them how great they are and so forth, they have a lot of trouble not falling back into it. From the Kentucky Derby to the Preakness, I never saw him, not once. From the Preakness to the Belmont, I never saw him. He was in New York, but I never did see him. Now, if you won the Kentucky Derby, you'd think afterwards that the guy would come to the barn and ask how he is, or at least contact you the next day. I never saw him. And I knew that there was something up. And I really, when we ran into Belmont, if I'm honest with you, I didn't want to ride him. I wanted to change. But Bob Lewis, a great owner, said, no, Wayne, you got 2 legs of the Triple Crown. You can't change now. You got to let him ride him. And, of course, that we did. And I don't blame him, but the horse ran 3rd. He didn't ride the race that he'd been riding, though.
Well, tell the story about Thunder Gulch after the Derby when you gave the barn the money and the courier went and picked it up.
Oh, yeah. The Thunder Gulch was owned by a leading guy that owned gambling shops in Ireland, Michael Tabor. And he understood the gambling business. I didn't realize how well he understood it until I trained for him a little while. But now we go out there and we win the Kentucky Derby at 25 or 28. I don't know. You'd have to look it up. But we were not the favorite. So he pays something like $50. We come to the barn and we're there and we're all excited and everything. And about 8:30. Here comes Michael Tabor with a couple limos and his group, and they get out, and he says, where's the horse? I said, he's down there and about 6 stalls down. And Mrs. Tabor comes down, and I don't know where she got this Saks Fifth Avenue shopping bag. I'm talking about a big shopping bag. But she had it, and she goes down by a stall, and she just drops it. And I look in it, and it is full right to the top with bundled $10,000 bundles, right to the top. And I said, wow, Doreen, what's this? She said, oh, we got that, but she said we couldn't get it all because she said it was taking too much time. She said, we'll go back Wednesday and get the rest. Well, come to find out, he made over $800,000 betting on the horse and got another $800,000 for the purse. So here they leave. Take the shopping bag with them, of course. So the race manager, Demi O'Byrne, calls me up and says, we'd like to do something nice for the barn. And I said, well, that'd be great. And he said, we got all this cash here. He said, what do you think you need? And I don't know where I got the number, but I said, why don't you send $48,000 out? He said, good, I'll send it out. So the next day, this courier comes in a little bitty utility car like thing, and he's sweating, and he says, Mr. Lukas, he said, we're bonded, but he said, I think you better count this. He said, I'm not so sure it's all here. And I said, what happened? He said, well, when I went and picked it up, they were having a money fight. And I said, what do you mean? He said, they were throwing the bundles at each other, and it was breaking and all over the suite at the Marriott. And he said they were sweeping it up and putting it in here, and I don't know how much is in here. So we counted, sure enough, it was short a couple. It was 46 and change. So I called Demi Byrne up, and I said, Demi, I said, you're a little bit short, send another 12. So sure enough, here comes the courier. This time he said, I counted it, Mr. Lukas, it's all here. So we split it up among all the grooms, the exercise riders, the hot walkers, everybody got going pretty good. I'm rambling on here, but there's a book out called, I think it's called The Greatest Gambling Story Ever Told. It just came out. Now here's what happened. I had winning colors, the first one of only 3 horses, fillies, to ever win the Kentucky Derby. In February, a couple of my top grooms said, boss, are we going to run the filly in the Derby? And I said, we might. I said, we'll see how she does. I think we'll run her in the Santa Anita Derby and see how she does. That's all I told them. Come to find out, they pooled their money. They all put in whatever, and they took it down to Caliente, and they bet it in the future book at 200 to 1. Can believe it or not, being a filly, nobody thought she'd even be in it. Nobody thought anything of it. My son Jeff one day said, you know, those guys bet quite a bit. and they got that big odds on this filly, and I never thought anything of it. She wins the race, and that night, Jeff, my son, says, Dad, I don't know if we're going to have any help in the morning. I said, what? He said, they got that ticket. And I said, oh, geez. So now they are agonizing how to go get the money. They're afraid to go down there and get stopped at the Border Patrol with all that cash and, you know, not being able to really explain it. And so they agonized for hell about a week, and they decided that they should send at least 3 and maybe 4 guys, because if they send one, he'll just keep going. He'll be down in Mexico. So they finagle around. They got different cars and they got it back. Well, somebody wrote a book about it, just came out, and they, instead of the grooms, our grooms, he used 3 fictitious characters were gamblers. But it's an interesting story, and the way he portrays it, them trying to get it back across the border. They were even scared to go in and cash it. They had pistols. The kids had pistols on them when they went in to cash it down there in Caliente. The first time they went in to cash it, they didn't have enough money. They had to wait 3 days for them to get the money. They damn near broke the book. Well, you know how that turned out. Boy, new cars, new TVs. I mean, everybody traded their car. But that actually happened.
Wayne, we were talking the other day about the best 2-year-olds you ever had, and I think we both agree Grand Canyon, a horse not many people know, is one of the greatest racehorse stories of all time. Tell them about his race. He ran at Churchill Downs at 133 flat.
He had he was really, not only was he a racehorse, he had the looks to die for. He make your knees buckle to look at him. And I had the horse of the year, criminal type. He was the horse of the year, and I ran him in a stake in the 7th race at Hollywood Park, and he ran 134-2. The next race was the fraternity for 2-year-olds, and Grand Canyon ran down there in 133 flat. Boy, I mean, he was a serious race. I thought, here we come, get the Triple Crown trophy out and engrave it now, because we're on our way. Pulling up, he was hard to pull up, and Cordero was on him. And Cordero was having trouble pulling him up, and the outrider moved in and tried to help him, and he nicked his tendon. Now, it didn't cause him to bow, but it caused a blood clot in the carpal canal. And 5 days later, he foundered in one foot. He shed the foot, and we lost him. But boy, was that a good one.
He was a good horse.
Up and downs of the game.
Yeah, that just shows how it can go up and down. I mean, because you said earlier, some of the good best ones people don't even realize or know about.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yep.
So.
And you know, we lost. Sometimes all of us here, John, Dale, everybody that trains horses wishes all their career that maybe it'll happen to them. Maybe they'll get that one that is special. Maybe Secretary will come along, or Seattle Slew, or Spend the Buck, or Spectacular Bid. By the way, I thought that was the greatest horse I ever saw. And then it happens to you. It happened to me with a horse called Landalusi. She was so brilliant that it just was mind-boggling. And she had 5 outs. She won every one of them. And then she got a virus that attacks all the vital organs in the bloodstream, and we lost her. And you just wonder if it's ever going to happen again to you. But you keep going, and you hope that. And then later on, a couple good ones came along, and here you go again.
I'm going to tell my bad luck story, but it ends up with Wayne. They want us to wrap things up a little bit, but Dennis's moment.
Tell them about Shackelford too.
Shackelford was a damn good horse, but I'm going to tell them about the story about you first.
Okay.
Dennis's moment, which is a local celebrity. He won here by 19 lengths, the best maiden race I've ever seen. He goes over to Churchill Downs and he just gallops in the Iroquois. He's 3-5 favorite in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile at Santa Anita, and we sold him for a big money. But there was about a $6 million bonus if he wins that race, and that equates to a pretty good commission, Wayne.
Yep.
And he's, I don't know, most people probably know the story. He stumbled so bad out of the gate that he ran 3 strides on his knees, jammed his shoulders up, runs around there, I think beats 1 horse. And it's the most depressed I think I've ever been in horse racing. I'm walking back and getting heckled by the crowd. And then I had to fly out that night, and it was the worst flight possible. We missed our first connection. We got in early in the morning. Next morning, my phone was ringing off the hook. I wouldn't answer anybody's calls. I go in the house, I go lay down for a little bit, and I keep looking. The phone keeps ringing. I don't answer. And then I look, Wayne Lukas, you answer that call. So I answered. He said, I just wanted to call and tell you how bad I felt for you and how I understand exactly how you're feeling right now. He said, what are you doing? I said, I'm taking a nap. He said, well, get out of bed and come meet me at Rumors, a place by his house, and let's eat lunch. And I think that's about the only thing that could have pulled me out. I was contemplating quitting. It was as low as I've been in the game. And Wayne called me. He says, get your ass out of bed. Come meet me for lunch. And the sun will come up tomorrow, and it'll be good. And that's the kind of person Wayne Lukas is for the people.
Well, I appreciate that. It's easy to pat them on the back and holler and shake hands, and the big ones when you can't believe how a race like the Kentucky Derby will actually change your life. The day after the morning after the Kentucky Derby, I was supposed to go to New York to be on the Letterman show, and so I'm running to the airport. I'm late because I'd taken the press conference with the press people, and I'm running, and I come down the ramp to get on the airplane, and I just make it. She started to swing the door, and I bounce in there, and everybody in the plane starts to clap. And the stewardess says to me, she said, boy, they're glad you made it. And the pilot looks out and said, no, this guy just won the Kentucky Derby. Everybody on the plane knew it. But how about, you got to have a lot of confidence. You got to really believe in what you're doing, and not let anybody talk you out of it or deter you. The confidence level has got to be there all the time. We go to the Breeders' Cup at Santa Anita. Dale's in the filly race, the 2-year-old filly race. Got a nice filly. I'm in there. I'm 38 to 1, maybe 40.
Maybe the longest shot on the board.
Yeah. Well, I was 62 to 1 when they kicked it. I'm 62 to 1. I'm standing there. We're waiting for the riders to come out. I got Espinoza on mine. I don't know who you were waiting for.
Robbie Alvarado.
Robbie Alvarado. So Dale kind of sides over next to me.
As I always do.
And so I thought it the hell. So I'm talking to Espinoza, and I said, now look, you lay first or third all the way around there. And I said, when you get to the quarter pole, I want you to get some separation. I said, separate yourself from the field and open up a couple. And I said, you probably can hang on at the end. But I said, I want some separation at the quarter pole. And Dale looks at me, and he says, what the hell is this separation stuff? And he said,
look at the tote board?
Yeah, he said, you're 60 to 1. What do you mean separation?
That's confidence.
Yeah.
And you know what the filly did at the quarter pole? She got separation.
She got separation. She opened up and won them.
And won.
Yeah.
And then we just shook our head. Only Wayne Lukas could pull this one
he
off.
looks at me and he says, what the hell is this separation stuff?
Thanks everybody for coming out here. They want us to get this thing wrapped up a little bit.
You want to let them bet? Is that the idea? Yeah, one more. We're over there. Yes.
Any questions?
Okay. Candy rag.
Okay.
She wanted to be entered by Craig for the Breeders' Cup Classic, and they decided to put him into breeding instead because the supplemental fee was prohibitive.
I don't know.
That wasn't us.
I don't have.
I know it wasn't Wayne.
No.
I
Yeah.
know it wasn't Wayne.
Yeah,
I'm
I don't
asking
know.
you
I
what
don't
you
know the
think of
story behind that.
situation. Well, the enter fee, the supplemental fee to enter in the Classic was too much for Craig. It wouldn't have.
Oh, it may have been because he was foreign bred, right? And
Yeah,
and so it was.
Argentina.
Yeah, the fee was. He wasn't nominated as a baby, So if you're not nominated, the fee to get in is huge.
What do you think of that?
Well, I think it's the only way you can do it. Otherwise, no one would nominate. If you could just buy your way in at the time of the race, and the whole thing is based on, there's a $500 nomination fee at birth that goes into the pools to pay all these purses. And if you didn't have a reason to nominate, no one would. So
Yeah, that eliminates. Every once in a while, somebody will pay. It's 250,000, I think.
yeah, sometimes people will step up and pay it. But you got to have a system that promotes nominating early to get the Breeders' Cup to even, to get going. When it was the concept was started, those purses were unheard of, and you had to have some mechanism of getting enough money, and that's how they did it.
Is there any other questions? We got time for like one more.
One way back there, too. Yeah.
Wayne, I know you were the leading quarter horse trainer in the nation for several years, and I know you enjoyed training quarter horses and the people with them. How does that compare with training thoroughbreds?
Well, my heart's still with the quarter horses. My wife is showing today and tomorrow up in Colorado. We've got 4 or 5 young show horses, not runners. But my heart's still with the quarter horses because I think it was my first love, and it started out. By the way, these things you brought me from your scrapbook here is unbelievable. Here's something. Here's the standings at Centennial Racetrack. These are top riders: Jerry Burgess, Keith Asmussen, and Jerry Burgess. Top trainers. The top rider was Robert Adair. He had 17 wins. The top trainer was D. Wayne Lukas. He had 23. I had more than a rider. I'm really proud of that.
You should have only ridden one rider. He'd have been leading rider.
Yeah, and I was riding Adair a lot too. But I love the quarter horses. They fell into my career because I could train them in the summer, and not the thoroughbreds are a little bit harder to get fit, get ready. I could get ready with those a lot quicker.
He came over to thoroughbreds. He was telling me a story one time, and he said he only had a couple of horses in the barn. Runs into a guy and says, big owner says, "You want to claim some horses for me?" He said, "I don't train claiming horses." Turn around and walks away. He says, "You don't train any. You don't have an empty barn."
My son said, "Dad, go get him back." He said, "We don't have any horses." I said, "Don't worry about it. We're not going to get a label of a claiming horse trainer."
All right, Wayne, we have one more here.
Yeah.
Very important question. Who's going to win the first race?
You in it?
I'm not in the first, but
I'm not in it.
When people ask me who's going to win, I always say the 4.
All right, folks, we're going to wrap it up here, but just want to let you know, on behalf of Ellis Park, we would like to have you guys join in with us and wish this gentleman in the middle a happy 55th birthday, and we're going to lead in song here. Dale Roman's birthday.
Oh, you got a birthday today?
Today, yeah.
Are you kidding?
55 years old, Wayne.
Well, that is terrific. I didn't know you kept that pretty silent. Yeah.
So we do
I got one while I'm here too. Mine's September 2nd.
You'll be 86?
86.
Yep. Good.
I'm only going to do this till I'm 90. I already decided.
So we have these pictures, these photo opportunities here with these guys. It has their accolades on the back of it. They're free. They'll be up here on the table, and the guys will autograph them. Also, courtesy of Farm Boy, they've provided hot dogs and refreshments for us, and we do have some cupcakes to celebrate with you, Dale.
Thank you. Yes,
thanks, everyone.
Dale will pass out of cupcakes.
All right. And last but not least, while you're up here, both of these gentlemen, I know this program is very near and dear to their heart, but Second Stride is here. It's an aftercare, thoroughbred aftercare, and we are accepting donations here. And it's a aftercare association that rehomes, retrains, and rehabs these thoroughbreds that we love so much.
Yes, it's a very good organization. They do a lot for us. These horses have to have some place to go when it's over with. So, right.
Okay, and the forms will be up here as well.